I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, Gopal.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. In this talk, I'll share some ideas and practices on how we can improve the way we deliver ML solutions. Um, About myself, I am Gopal Singhal, working as lead infrastructure consultant at ThoughtWorks. I am AWS and Google certified cloud professional with over 15 years of industry experience. I'm an AI enthusiast, and in my current project, I'm managing engineering and infrastructure aspects of machine learning experiments and solutions. So, what we are going to see in this session, we'll start with uh, introduction to machine learning, understanding what it is, how it works, and then we will move to its engineering aspects. Next, we will explore ML workflows and needs for its improvements. What all things needs improvements and how we can do that. And after that, we will cover some common challenges in productionizing machine learning solutions with some tools, principles, and practices to overcome those challenges. And at the end, we'll see a generic CD pipeline for machine learning based applications. So before we begin, let's do a temperature check to see how many of us are familiar with ML. Mrinal, can you help us with a poll? Okay, so let's wait for a few more seconds. Sharing. Okay, so most of us are not familiar with machine learning based projects. That is fine. We'll start with very basic introduction to machine learning, and then we'll move to continuous delivery practices on machine learning. Uh, I'll try to like talk in very basic terms so that like everyone can understand what we are going to see there. Okay. So yeah, before we go into the definition of machine learning, let's first acknowledge its presence around us. We have seen a lot of machine learning based applications around us without like knowingly unknowingly using them. Uh, so there are a lot of ML based applications that we use or deal with in day-to-day life, like Amazon Alexa, Apple Siri, Google Search. I am sure every one of us has used Google Search. Then product recommendations on Flipkart, Amazon, uh, and automatic spam filtering. So in our email box, like sometimes spams comes and so those are automatically filtered to spam box. So all these are like some examples of machine learning based applications. In next few slides, we'll take a closer look into some basic ML applications to understand like what these are. So this is supervised machine learning. This is one of the types of machine learning. We'll learn about that later. But in this slide, we'll first try to understand what this is. So in this type of machine learning, we first teach the machine or algorithm uh, with some data, and then the artifact produced by the training helps us with the predictions. So if we see the first example over here, We have lots of images. Though in this diagram we have just images of apples, but we can also show images of other fruits and then label them that, okay, all these ones are apples. If there are more fruits, we can like label them or like, yeah, tag them with their respective names. And then we pass on all this data to algorithm to learn about it. So how algorithm learns about it is by identifying its edges, by identifying its color, hue, and various other combinations. And then it internally develops a system, or like we call it a model, which once we provide an unknown data to it, it can identify the right product. So over here in this part, we are giving a tagged or labeled data to algorithm. So over here, we are like kind of training it to identify the product. So similar to a newborn child, like uh, when we have like a newborn child, like we tell the child like this is apple, this is mango, and with time, child develops that knowledge, that understanding on differentiating the products. So once that learning is developed, if we provide an input which is not tagged or labeled, the model can give a prediction, okay, this is an apple, but it is a green colored apple. Same way, a lot of recommender sites like um, where we can see like 99 acres or housing.com and those kind of things. Uh, we can see like there are flats of different size, number of beds, number of baths, and their prices vary according to these parameters. These are just three of them, but there are a lot more, the locality, the city, and there could be many more such parameters based on which their prices can be recommended. So initially we can provide the labeled or tagged data to machine. For example, the first three records where we have the type of flat and then its estimated price. And we provide this data to the machine. And then the fourth record where we don't know what the right price should be for this apartment. When we provide this data, machine will be able to give us a right prediction, like what should be the right price for this apartment. So this is one of the use case in general. So we got some idea of like how we can get a machine trained based on some labeled or tagged data, and then how we can get benefit out of it through its production predictions. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So this is another type of machine learning called unsupervised machine learning. In the previous one, we provided labeled or tagged data. Over here, the data we provide is not labeled or not categorized. And then, and over here, like we allow machine to identify the similarities or differences in data by performing clustering or anomaly detection or like some computation on its own. So if we see this example over here, we have a group of images. It could be like fish, birds, and could be more. Like we can add like more pictures over here, like animals and all. We pass on this data to machine. Again, it will do some computation on this data, and after that computation, it is able to create two separate clusters. It was able to identify similarities amongst the birds and dissimilarities of birds with fishes. So fishes, three fishes are similar, so these are clustered in one group, and birds in another. So this is like an example of cluster. Uh, these kind of clusterings are useful in social networks, in customer categorization. So if I'm like an e-commerce website, I have lots of customers. I may want to give some offers to my premium customers. So how can I identify my premium customers? So those kind of clustering can be achieved through this. Another example we can see is like anomaly detection, like something unusual happening. So over here, we are showing up how some customers are using different authentication mechanism for buying some food or clothes or any kind of purchase they are doing. So every one of us has some pattern. Like for example, I prefer net banking. Another person may prefer Paytm. Third person may prefer card swiping. So we have some pattern, and maybe like I prefer doing e-commerce purchases through net banking, but I pay my bills through Paytm. So these are some patterns I develop. But uh, if if we provide all this data to machine, it can identify any anomaly if there is. Like for example, Bob over here has used PIN for some tech category where he spent like a good amount of money. So this is an unusual purchase and it is identified by machine. So these kind of things are used for fraud detection. Like if my card is stolen or my Paytm wallet is stolen or something like that, and something unusual happening with my credit things. So this is another type of machine learning. Let's move to next slide. Yeah. So now we have seen a few examples of machine learning. Now let's try to understand what machine learning is in a formal definition. So machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that uses statistical techniques, like where we have provided data. Uh, it performs some statistical techniques on the data to give computers ability to learn from that data without being explicitly programmed to do so. So we are not doing any explicit programming on calculating the prices or identifying the image. We are passing on this data, and then machine is learning from that data on its own and providing us predictions. There are multiple types and categories of machine learning. We have seen a few in previous examples. We covered two examples in supervised learning, two in unsupervised learning. Each of uh, each of these circles, small, big, are like different categories of machine learning. We will not go into details of these types. Uh, so the purpose of like last three slides was to understand what machine learning is. Let's move forward to understand how it actually works. Okay. So in this diagram, like we have a very generic flow diagram of how machine learning system works. Over here, like we have training data. So this could be a collection of pictures, could be collection of some data in CSV format or table. It could be even voice through which Amazon Alexa can work. Even there are tools which transcribe the voices. So all those are form of data. So next step is like where machine learning engineers or data scientists, they use Jupyter notebooks or some mechanism to process the data, pre-process the data in the form where algorithm can understand it and learn from it. We provide more parameters to it, and then we get a machine learning algorithm ready. Now, when we provided that training data to it, at the same time we took some data aside, which we can use to test it, like whether my machine learning solution is good enough or not. Now we pass that data to the machine learning algorithm and see what it is predicting. Based on its result, whether it is good or not, if it is good, it is a successful model and can be used in production. If it is not, that means something needs to be fixed in its training process. Either my parameters are not right, either my data is not right, or I was using wrong algorithm to perform this operation. So this is like a high level overview of how machine learning works. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So now we have seen machine learning process. Let's see some engineering aspects to it, like what kind of software requirements it has, what kind of hardware requirements it has. So process, as I described in previous diagram, we initially do a pre-processing of input data. Then we do training of that model. And at the end, if we find it successful, we get it deployed to do the actual predictions in production environment. In terms of software requirements, there are a bunch of Python libraries or frameworks which are used for creating the machine learning models. Few of them are like TensorFlow, MXNet, and PyTorch. There are many more. These are some of the popular ones. Apart from that, data scientists use notebook environments. For collaboration, they can use Jupyter Hub. This is one of the notebook offerings. There are again like other notebook offerings. For example, Google's CollabNet is there, where people can like write their data and all kind of code in the notebook. In terms of hardware requirement, so any kind of machine learning or machine training process requires a lot of computation. Uh, in regular software world, CPUs are good enough to achieve the computation needs. But in case of machine learning, we require GPUs and TPUs. And at the same time, like to make a better machine learning model or an artifact, we require a lot of data. And there is a saying also, like a person can produce better results not because of better algorithms, but because of more data. So a person with more and more data can produce better results. So as large as data we have, that will help us in producing better results. So this data can go into terabytes, petabytes. So we require a lot of storage and a lot of computation. So these are some of the hardware requirements. Okay. So now what's the problem? Why do we need to improve the ML workflow? We saw a high level overview of how it works. Let's see what are some of the problems. So in ML world, data scientists are typically familiar with the Jupyter notebooks. Uh, so these notebooks are good for data processing, for doing experiments, but these are not linear. They do not provide any kind of versioning in it. Uh, so these are good tool for initial exploration and experimentation for data scientists, but it is not suitable for production. So that brings a big gap between how our data scientists or machine learning engineers work and how it should be on production. So over here, like in next few slides, we will cover these challenges and how to address those. But before moving there, let's try to understand different machine learning application components. So a machine learning application, basically, like we we saw that it consists of data, model, and code. We'll talk about each of them individually a bit. So if we see what is data, as we saw in the examples, it is a snapshot of current time, snapshot of reality. So for example, if I go on an e-commerce website, I purchase something that is producing a data. So that is a snapshot of that time, that moment. It is a combination of schema and content which changes over time. So we can sample the data with time, uh, and then like with that collection, we can do further processing. The next component is model. Now, what model is? Model is again a combination of algorithm, training, and parameters. So models are nothing but artifacts which try to describe a product reality. Uh, we train these models with data in an iterative process with different parameters and different algorithms, and then get the desired results. So these models can change over time. These are iterative in nature, and these can change with even changing the algorithm itself. Like, we'll not go into that detail for now. Let's consider it just as a combination of algorithms and parameters with training done through the data. So next section is code. Um so code, we most of us are like familiar with what code is, but in case of machine learning, it is another component which wraps around the machine learning solution. So model is just a binary piece available to us, but to actually use it, we need a wrapper code which can utilize it. And this is the piece which serves the business needs. Okay, so we saw what machine learning is, saw some bit about on how it works. So the $1 million question over here is how to get it to production in a repeatable and in a reliable way. So our data scientists are helping us in producing these models and all, uh, but how to get it to production. In next few slides, we'll be talking about challenges and solutions for these for this process. So in the previous session, I think most of you already attended that session where we talked about CI/CD. There are multiple phases in that pipeline, and for machine learning, each phase brings in some challenges which are unique to machine learning based CD. So we'll be talking about those challenges, and we'll see how we can solve them and what are some of the tools which can help us in solving those problems. So to start with, the first thing is versioning. So when we talked about CI/CD in a previous session, the first thing or the first practice that comes in front of us is versioning whatever we are developing. It is easy to do it with code. There are a lot of tools in market since years. Uh, but in case of machine, we have tons of data, like we have terabytes of data. And that is a component of machine learning. And that also requires versioning, because the end artifact is not developed by just the code. It was developed using the code, the algorithm, the parameters, and data. So all these things should be versioned so that we can do a backtracking of from where that model is developed. So for versioning this large data, there are tools in market like there's DVC, that is data version control. There's Pachyderm, there's Git LFS, large file system. And once we develop the models, we can label them with the parameters. We can tag with metadata on the timestamp, the hyperparameters, and even the SHAs of the version control system, like Git or DVC or whatever version control system we use. It produces a SHA, and we can use that SHA to label our artifacts. So this is one way we can overcome the challenge of implementing versioning in machine learning system. Okay. So moving to next challenge, configuration management. So most of us know about configuration management in software world. Like we want to achieve that to avoid snowflakey environments, to avoid challenges like works on my machine, but it doesn't work on QA or production. So how we can achieve that? So solution is similar to the practice we follow in software world, to have a single command setup. For that, we can use Docker. That is one option we use in software world as well. We can use Papermill to have parameterized notebooks. We can use cloud offerings like SageMaker, Azure ML, Google AI to have automated setups uh, or automated packaging of our machine learning artifacts. Fine. Okay, moving on to next slide. So third phase is testing. So we did versioning, we did some packaging. Now we want to do some testing of the artifacts we have produced. So in machine learning, we have various components, as we have seen in versioning. Even before that, we have data, we have features, parameters, algorithms, and everything requires some testing. For data, we can use statistical analysis like mean, median, variance, whether my data is not biased towards one category. I have like right split around the data, uh, relationship amongst different components of it, variance and all those things. So these things can be used to do a testing on the data. Like we can collect that statistical analysis, we can do that, perform that, and then from that analysis, we can make out whether our data is good enough for training the model or not. Another thing which we should often do is retrain the model and collect performance metrics. How my model is doing. Model is nothing but my machine learning algorithm, which is trained against the data. So we can do performance testing against that model. Then there are other types of testing that can be performed for machine learning, like coverage guided fuzzing and metamorphic testing. We will not go into the details of these. In terms of tools, there are Python libraries which can be used to perform these data. There are R libraries to do statistical analysis. And there are tools in market which can be used to collect all these data, do comparisons and stuff. Few of them are like MLflow, Comet.ml, there is Neptune.ai, and there are many more. Like, I think TensorFlow, TensorBoard is also there. So these kind of tools can help in collecting the test metrics and doing analysis against it. And then based on the feedback coming from testing, we can do more training or change our code or change our data accordingly. So next thing is deployment. So we have artifact ready. We did some testing. Now we found that testing was successful. We have a successful model with us. How we can get the deployment done? In terms of software, there are cloud-based tools. There are Kubernetes tools and scripts you can write to automate the deployment. Same way, there are tools for machine learning product deployments in automated way. So again, goal is to get a single command, single click deployments to any environment. So tools like Cortex, SageMaker, these can help in getting the deployment automated for cloud platforms. And there is Kubeflow to get the deployment automated with Kubernetes based environment. So we are good so far. We got our artifact deployed somewhere. But the next thing is whether it is good or not. How can I know if whatever I have deployed is better or worse than the previous one? Reason being is when we test our artifacts with our models, we use some sample data we have. But in real world, the real data could be different. For example, in e-commerce websites, Amazon, Flipkart, there are recommendations at the bottom based on my purchase history, my search history, uh, based on purchase history and search history of people like me, it provides some suggestions. Those suggestions may or may not be good. And that is the real testing. Like that is the real performance, which can be seen only when things go in production. So these kind of things we cannot test in the testing phase. So, uh, sorry. So solution to it is one is request shadowing pattern. So as you can see, this is my machine learning model. Any request coming from browser, I am serving it through the model which is already in production. And in parallel, I serve a new model, which will also predict, but it will not give the response back to the customer. It will just predict, and all this data is collected in some metrics collection form, like could be Prometheus, Grafana, ELK FK stack, or whatever. And then we can compare which kind of result is better, whether the result which my current production model uh, is giving right, or results produced by new model is right. So based on that feedback, we can upgrade our model on production. And at the same time, we need to keep our environments monitored for how they are performing in terms of predictions uh, and even performance in terms of the time it takes to provide the prediction. The metrics play a very vital role, especially in machine learning, is because the data produced in production can be reused to train it further. So whatever logs generated over here can be transformed into new form of data. So to explain that, let's take an example of like housing.com or 99 acres. So we have a lot of data where like we have apartments and their prices. More and more data we collect from customers who are uploading their data. Our model can be stronger to identify the right or predict the right value for any new product. Okay, so last one. So we analyzed almost all the phases of CI/CD process for machine learning. But the next challenge is how can we do all of the above? In most of the organizations, data scientists or machine learning engineers are working in isolation. There are a group of engineers, like 8 to 10 engineers working on a complex machine learning problem. They are working day and night on Jupyter notebooks or stuff, but but they don't know how to get it to production. So to get to that level where we can have a proper CI/CD pipeline, we need, first thing we need is to build a cross-functional team. So we need other people with expertise in different domains, not just data scientists. So we need software engineers, we need DevOps people, UX, QAs, BAs. Another thing is we can also have a checklist through which we can track, iteratively improve. And that is what Agile is. So a continuous improvement process only can get us to a phase where we can release our machine learning deployments in repeatable and reliable way. So that is pretty much on how we can get to the CI/CD. This is a very generalized approach, a diagram on how an ML model can be released frequently and safely. Over here, we have source code, model parameters, and from the top, we are getting data. Through data science and machine learning mechanism, we are building the model. In the next phase, we have source code for evaluation purpose and providing the same parameters over here. And then that evaluation is done against some test data. Once everything is good, we move to the next phase where we productionize this model. So productionize over here means packaging it in form of Docker or in form of um, some other artifact, like it could be binaries, pickle files, something like that. And then we do an integration testing. So this testing is done to ensure that while productionizing the model, we have not lost any of the features, any of the performance of that model. So over here, we are doing that integration testing. Next is deployment, getting it to production or any other pre-production stage. And at the end, we are monitoring it. And the data collected from this production environment is going back for solidifying our training data. So yeah, I think that is pretty much from my side on CD for ML. Any questions?
Folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. All right, we have one.
Okay, so I'm unsharing my screen so that I can see chat or Q&A and answer the questions.
Sure. Ashish, you'd like to ask a question? Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, Ashish this side.
Yeah, hi Ashish.
So I want to ask one question like you have shared in slide number 5 that when we create a model, okay, and when we put in a productionized phase and we have calculated its accuracy and matrices and we have tested it, like for example we get the accuracy of it's like a 75%, okay.
Okay.
But the real key challenge is that when we face the real data set, which is coming from a Google Chrome or something else or from client, okay, so we are not able to find the thing like what is the like the accuracy may decline also na, at that moment.
Exactly. It may
So
decline.
So it is not capturing the actual thing like the model is, and you have said that we have created 2 models and we are just monitoring it. So what is the phase, what is that phase that you are monitoring ki I will use the first model or I will use the second model?
So like I will say you have kind of answered your own question. So when we have the shadowing pattern in place, the model which was already in production will serve the request as is. Will be monitoring how it is performing in terms of the user feedback. And at the same time, we'll see how the new model is predicting. And from that data, we will calculate its accuracy or other. So accuracy is one of the parameters or one of the metrics which can be used to check whether model is doing good or not. We can calculate other metrics, F1
yeah,
score
yeah,
and
sure,
other
sure.
stuff. And that we can do from the data collected from that phase, like where we have both the models serving the request.
No, so there is.
I'll give you an example to make it understand. So, for example, in e-commerce application again, suppose I am showing some suggestions to my customer. My current production solution is showing 4 suggestions, and out of those 4, user clicked 2 of them. My new model is also producing some 4 suggestions, though I cannot show them. But suppose the end user clicked or searched something which my new model was suggesting. That means my new model is performing better than the previous model. So all this data is not provided to us, like to the data scientists or the DevOps engineers, in the like ready to use form. It comes in a very raw form. We have to transform the data or the logs collected from the user experience, and then transform it into a usable form where we can actually evaluate the accuracy or F1 score of model and then take actions accordingly. I hope I answered your question.
Like what you said, like for example, you were saying that it is not the duty of a data scientist to monitor the end result. Like we have created like 2 or 3 models for one such scenario, okay, for e-commerce, and we have put in a production. Okay, in the end, we get a response from a user or a client. Okay, and what he's saying that like these are features, and you are just predicting the results, and some person is there, human intervention is there in the end, who is monitoring all those things, and according to that he is choosing the model, like which one is better. Is that right?
So it again depends on company to company and their organizational structure. Uh, I didn't call out any role like who has to do what. In a lot of companies, uh, data scientists are like kind of polyglot. They know everything, like they know DevOps, they know data science, and they are taking care of their products end to end. In such scenarios, collecting logs, collecting data from production, doing pre-processing of that raw data to a usable form can be done by data scientists as well. There could be organizations where like there are hundreds of people in the team where each phase is managed by a different team. Like, so there is a different team who collects log and do log filtering. There is another team which do data pre-processing from that log, uh, write the transformation scripts, which can produce the data, which can be again like used by data scientists. So we are talking more around process rather than who owns it. You got my point?
Right. Yeah, that is my question. Like who is the person that is monitoring, like.
Yeah. So it again depends on company to company and like depends on the organizational structure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions? I think Shlok had a question on the tab about the shadowing pattern, Gopal. It's done.
Yeah, Shlok. So I think while answering the previous question, I repeated what shadowing pattern is. So in case of shadowing pattern, we keep requests coming into the production, and we shadow that request, whatever request is coming, we shadow it to another parallel system deployed. And whatever outcome is coming from that parallel system, we don't send it back to end user, but we keep it, we record it in some log systems or metric systems for further analysis. And based on that, we can identify whether our new parallel deployed environment is good enough to be moved to production or not. Okay. Okay, Shlok, so do we have to learn Python for machine learning? Yeah, so as Nitin answered, most of the machine learning libraries are written in Python and R. So these are the two most popular languages. Python is preferred over R because of its presence in the software engineering world as well. R is more around statistics. So for exploratory analysis and experiments, R is good enough. But when we come to the CI/CD pipelines, Python is more popular for that purpose.
Right. So folks, I've just pasted a feedback link on the chat window. So if all of you could just take out a minute to fill, it's a very quick form. It would really help us to improve. And if there are any other, I see a question in the chat. So if you could please post your questions in the Q&A tab. We're not really monitoring the chat window for any questions. Gopal, there's a question from Abhishek, how CI/CD is different in case of machine learning when compared with the generic CI/CD solution. If you could just summarize maybe.
Yeah, so Abhishek, CI/CD in general, to understand like what is the purpose of CI/CD, it helps us in giving faster releases in repeatable and reliable form. So in general, CI/CD is same for any kind of delivery. It could be software, it could be machine learning, it could be even hardware in hardware industries. But CI/CD is implemented in different way in different forms. So when Sadaf started with the introductory node, she explained how a continuous delivery process can be achieved in a manufacturing industry. The same way, like over there, the processes or the implementation is different. Phases could be similar. Same way in machine learning, we talked about different phases of CI/CD, but the implementation of it, the tooling we use to implement that may vary. But in general, the concept of CI/CD will remain same. I hope I answered your question.